would like to extend warm welcome to all the panelists and audience joining for this exciting webinar, or we can call it a roundtable discussion on deployment of artificial intelligence in logistics, accelerating customer experience. Before moving to that event, let me introduce about our company. So ITP is a Dubai-based, Dubai headquartered company. We have operation in India and other parts of Middle East, and we published more than 100 titles across verticals, and we also organize a lot of events, awards, conferences, and all. Manufacturing Today, under which banner this event is being organized, is a well-known manufacturing industry magazine covering manufacturing industries in detail, processes, technology, all kind of stuff that you would want to know about manufacturing. You'll get it here. And today's event is supported by Gupshup, which is better known for customer engagement through conversational messaging services. Gupshup is the leading conversational messaging platform, powering over 6 billion messages per month. Across verticals, through and to large and small businesses in emerging markets, use Gupshup to build conversational experiences across marketing, sales, and support. Gupshup's carrier-grade platform provides a single messaging API for 30 plus channels, a rich conversational experience building toolkit for any use case, and network of emerging market partnerships across messaging channels, device and manufacturers, ISPs, and operators. With Gupshup, businesses have made conversations an integral part of their customer engagement and success. Today's topic is deployment of artificial intelligence in logistics. How to accelerate customer experience using this technology. Obviously, technology is disrupting the industry, and logistics and supply chain can't stay away from it for sure. So with growing demand in the production and higher demand in shipping, more and more businesses are turning to conversational AI in order to save time. In fact, with many companies expanding their services to wide audiences using marketplaces like Amazon and Flipkart, who have been steadily improving the customer service through technological assistance. The necessity of physical services for errands is becoming obsolete. Adopting conversational automation with the help of conversational messaging and chatbots is the need of the hour for the logistics and supply chain management industries. So this is the broad topic of the event, and to discuss these issues, we have very august panelists who are young, dynamic, change maker, and disrupting the industry with the use of technology. So I'd like to introduce first panelist for today's event is Soham Chokshi, who is the CEO and co-founder of Shipsy, the industry-first smart logistics management platform that help customers reduce logistic cost, achieve transparency, and improve on-time delivery of goods across ocean, air, rail, and road with an intelligent approach. Under his supervision, the company has rapidly blossomed into a leading SaaS-based solution provider dedicated to reducing logistic cost and improving on-time delivery of goods through its pioneering Bloomberg for supply chain model. Our second panelist for today's event is Mr. Venu Kondur. He's the CEO and co-founder of Lobb. Lobb is a technology startup in the logistics space based out of Bangalore. Lobb is a digital freight brokerage app, works with over 700 plus logistics companies and 3,000 plus fleet owners across pan-India. Venu has over 2 decades of experience in software development across e-commerce, logistics, and fintech domains. And in his early career times, he had the opportunity to develop and build ERP applications for large logistics companies. Our third panelist is Mr. Krishna Guha, who is a co-founder of Caliper Business Solutions and innovator of Transport EG and founder of BAP Global. Mr. Guha has over 35 years of experience and active engagement in various sectors, including 23 years in various streams of logistics. He has a grassroots level understanding of pharma, agri, engineering, FMCG, consumer durable, concept marketing, etc. In the field of logistics, he has engaged himself with all modes of transports and allied activities. He has also successfully co-founded leading digital transport marketplace, which is used by most India's brand. Next panelist, Mr. Parag Aggarwal, who is the CEO and co-founder of GoBolt, a tech-enabled express supply chain organization. He co-founded GoBolt in 2015 with his batchmates with a vision to eliminate inefficiencies and transform India's then traditional supply chain to a new age tech-driven express supply chain. Under his leadership, GoBolt has emerged as one of the fastest growing startups in India, having secured second position in the Economics Times 2020 Growth Champions ranking. And last but not the least, today's panelist, in fact, the moderator and also the presenter of today's event, Mr. Srinivas B. Vijayaraghavan, who's a VP Marketing Gupshup. Srinivas has over 2 decades of experience in running marketing for high growth technology companies and managing corporate marketing, product marketing, and demand generations. Prior to Gupshup, he held marketing leadership positions with GoBolt, Pluralsight, Mobilism, and Tejas Networks. So, gentlemen, welcome to all of you for today's event. I really appreciate your time that you have taken out for this event, and very interesting and exciting event going to happen. With this, I would like to welcome Srinivas to give a small presentation, followed by the panel discussion, which he will going to moderate. Over to you, Srinivas.
Thank you so much, Amin. And on behalf of Gupshup and Manufacturing Today, first of all, a big thank you to all our panelists for coming in and spending some time with us to talk about this exciting sector and how data and AI is transforming it, and also to all the people who have tuned in to listen to this conversation. So I have a few brief points that I'd like to share. So Gupshup, as was introduced, so we are basically a conversational messaging platform. And what that means in very simple terms is that we connect businesses and their customers through the medium of messaging, and we empower a lot of business through conversations on various messaging channels. So that's the essence of what we do as a company. And we work across multiple sectors, and logistics and supply chain is one of the key sectors that we are engaging with a lot of customers. So we wanted to take this opportunity to share a few developments in the market, if you will, that we are seeing. And then, that may set the stage for us to have a deeper discussion. So I think today there are a lot of challenges in logistics, especially in the last couple of years. I know that the pandemic has there have been a lot of disruptions in multiple industries, but especially the cross-border movement of goods, cross-country movement of goods was deeply impacted by the pandemic. There have also been changes to the way customers and producers have been looking at their own partners, both for supply and distribution, where they've sought to diversify and have multiple options instead of one. And the way customer communication is evolving, this is something that we are seeing in all industries, that where when we say customer, of course, we don't necessarily mean the two endpoints of the logistics network, but the customer for every part of the chain. So how that engagement is taking place, especially in a post-pandemic scenario with the availability of digital technologies, is also changing rapidly. And also, of course, this sector deals with a lot of organized workforce, but also a sort of a loosely coupled workforce. So how they are also being enabled digitally to be a part of a sort of a digitized supply chain. That is also a big theme that we are seeing across the board. And across all these elements, we are seeing that a large chunk of some of the challenges. And the thing about logistics, as in any other value chain, is that it's an interplay or an interlink of multiple entities that forms a very strong chain. And wherever you have two entities, there is always a potential for conversations to solve a lot of the gaps there. So we are seeing that a lot of companies are building technology stacks to digitize the supply chain, but they're also implementing a conversational stack where they're trying to see if can two entities, either at the supply side or the last mile or the middle mile, can any two entities be connected through messaging channels like WhatsApp or SMS. There are also journeys that are being created so that customers can envisage all the steps of the supply chain from where they start to where they end. And these journeys are being digitized and being given end-to-end transparent view, so that anybody in the chain can actually see where a particular item is at any point in time. And also, most importantly, the query handling, which not just happens at the end of the receiver, but also at every handoff point and at every transition point. So how, and these queries are not like a few, but they can sometimes be thousands of queries that are taking place between any two entities. So how some of those are being automated is another development that we are seeing, where conversations and AI can play a role. And like I was saying, if you envisage the supply chain, today we are actually working with a lot of companies to build bots for them to simplify procurement, to simplify distribution, to simplify tracking, and these are customers who are, some of them are born in digital companies, like especially in the retail and the e-commerce space, where they have a very strong understanding of technology and integrations. But many of them are also traditional players, like brick and mortar players, who are now digitizing various parts of their value chain, and we are playing a key role in doing that. And ultimately, what we see is conversational messaging can play a role in the entire logistical journey, as I was explaining earlier. It is a chain that is built through multiple interlinkages. And whenever there are two entities that need to converse with each other, this kind of technology can really play a key role. And AI is a very big enabler of conversational messaging. I mean, today, even as consumers, you would have noticed the proliferation of chatbots. Like, for example, in food delivery, there are some very famous chatbots there that are in play. But chatbots are playing a role in every part of the workflow, even in logistics and supply chain. So whether you are trying to get more customers to use your services, whether you're trying to make payments easy and frictionless between your customers and you, and how you're handling queries, all these three elements are being transformed with conversational AI. And typically, a conversational AI platform today has multiple capabilities. At the core of it is the NLP, natural language processing capability, where in a sort of distributed environment, where and a diverse environment like India, where there are multiple people across states, sometimes across countries, how can they converse with, let's say, a chatbot in a language of their choice, and everything is seamlessly understood? So understanding natural language, and then also using AI ML to address certain problems of discovery, problems of routing, problems of rerouting, and all of these things are being enabled through AI platforms today. And ultimately, the kind of vision that we have when we work with any of our customers is that if we always ask them to imagine that every person who works in your companies or in your customers' companies can have a personal logistics expert who can, depending on the kind of service that you provide, can answer any query for a customer, can provide any kind of data point, can solve problems automatically depending on how the situation is evolving in any part of the supply chain, and also be a 24/7 face to the end customer, so that they can simplify their tracking and support. And finally, I mean, of course, there's like preaching to the converted, but of course, there are multiple parts of the value chain that we are enabling through conversational messaging. So we're making packaging more intelligent, so that customers get a digital experience from a physical package. Not just customers, but even people who are handling the package through the different steps. We are making it easier for customers to schedule deliveries and returns. And also, we are also enabling order management between suppliers and distributors. We are using channels like WhatsApp to make that more intelligent. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, payments and support are two of the other areas that we are making quite frictionless. And we do have several use cases, but here are some. Like, this is typically how it manifests in terms of connected packaging, how notifications are sent on WhatsApp, how customers can be given options to change delivery addresses, how shipments can be tracked, how distributors can place orders on suppliers, and how support can be enabled. So in a nutshell, I would say that this is a sector that is sort of ripe and ready for digitization, especially with the amount of data that is being generated across the network. And we believe that AI in general and conversational AI can really make this whole supply chain experience very, very seamless from end to end. With that, having set the stage, I would like to open the floor, so to speak, to have a candid conversation about this. So maybe Venu, I can start with you from a Lobb point of view. So in terms of truck discovery and making this whole fleet of trucks available to both to the businesses as well as consumers, how are you using some of these digital platforms to to attract more customers, and also how are you building a tech stack to ensure that the discoverability of these assets is becoming quite smooth?
Hey, Srinivas. So absolutely, I mean, technology is the core and the backbone for our business, right? And that's how we really differentiate ourselves with how the conventional guys would actually discover the trucks, right? So we run through in multiple phases of, using AI and other technologies. Some of them in terms of how we can actually scan through the right trucker and the driver, right? Their rating system, how you really figure out that, hey, this is the right trucker that we should use for the right, this type of material, right? So there is no, rule that, hey, that a single truck would actually fit in for any kind of requirement, right? So you would have to fit in the right truck for the right demand that comes by at the right price. So the price discovery is also one of the essential thing that we do on a daily basis, using the technology that really tells us that, hey, this is the right price in this particular market, right? So considering the prices are quite volatile, and at times it fluctuates like about 20 to 25%, right? So unless and until you are accurate, you can't be relevant in the market, right?
Right.
So that's one. Second, like you rightly said, conversational AI, really helps in building the technology wherein the customer, is able to get most of the queries sorted out before you can actually, get the real person, a human being, right? A human touch, right? So therefore, most of the people are comfortable. Say, for example, somebody would want to know, hey, when did I get my payment? Can you tell me what's the UTR number like? Okay, so these are some of the questions that a truck owners would get, right? So so therefore it becomes for us a day-to-day KPI that, hey, how can we make it much more efficiency in our whole truck discovery process through technology, right? So that really plays a pivotal role.
And in order to achieve this kind of an experience and optimization, can you talk us through, especially for the audience that listening in, like what is the kind of data infrastructure that you have in place, and how do you ensure that these AI models that you build that allocate the right truck for the right use and also answer these queries accurately, that it functions in an efficient manner?
Yeah, so we start right from our sales, right? So these trucks, you would find them on. So we as a business do focus on long haul market, right? Where the trucks run, the national permit trucks that you see on highway, right?
Yeah.
So one of the key things that we do right from the sales is, hey, the guys who are on the foot on the field, how do we enable them much better through technology, right? So we don't talk to the owners there that the quality of your conversation in the street could be very bad, right? While so therefore what we do through technology is ask the foot on the field to actually click the photo and send it to the machine model, right? So the machine model can really pick up and say that, hey, this truck belongs to who is the owner, and there is a centralized call center who is helping the truck owner for the onboarding process, right? So that makes it a lot more simpler and easy rather than having the conversation on the street, right? So that's thing. Second, in terms of as a platform, it's very important that considering we are a digital freight marketplace, that until unless the demand gets the supply or the supply gets demand, you cannot become a true marketplace, right? So the people would come and wouldn't find what they would want to. So it becomes very important that how do you do that? So what we have done, Srinivas, is we have captured little over about 15 million footprints, over a period of time. That really tells us the whole variable market dynamics, right? So these dynamics are right from here. Are these goods perishable goods? Is it an FMCG? It's an industrial goods, right? What's the turnaround time? So pharma could be having a 24-hour deadline. Amazons and Flipkarts could be an overnight delivery. There could be OEM products for automobiles that could have about 48 to 72 hours of delivery timelines, right? So whether you require a double driver, whether you require a single driver in a truck, right? So the whole bunch of things, so we call it as VMD, variable market dynamics, as part of our, tech stack that really, understands the whole transit intelligence, that really understands that the right trucker that has to be contextually nudged at the right time, right? So therefore he could, respond for that price, right? So also as part of this whole exercise, we also capture the location intelligence. Say, for example, in north of Bangalore, there is a truck and the demand is coming from south of Bangalore, right? So what could be the cost on top of it for this guy to travel another 50 kilometers, right? Okay, versus if I am able to find a trucker that is in north of Bangalore, then possibly he may be, available for another 2,000 or 3,000 cheaper price, right? And then intelligence in terms of return load journeys, right? So how do you ensure that a trucker who is going from Bangalore to Delhi, he gets notified much before he comes back, whether he would like to go from Delhi to Mumbai or Delhi back to Bangalore, right? Or he would want to go to Hyderabad and then Hyderabad back to Bangalore, right? So the whole intelligence in terms of their behavior, understanding. So we have been able to capture that. So that's the whole mode that we are setting on, right?
Great, thanks for your views. So Parag, given that we're talking about a marketplace and also a fleet of trucks, I thought it'll be logical for me to ask you the next question. That what is the potential that you see for sort of disruption in the sort of middle mile? We've spoken about first mile and last mile, but not too many people focus on the middle mile part of the whole supply chain. So what are some of the challenges there that technology in general and AI and data models can actually solve?
Right. So Srinivas, just continuing with Mr. Venu's conversations, right? When he talked about the fact that how the intelligence can be used in terms of the mapping the right roads and the right trucks, right? So if we talk about GoBolt in general and just extending the question you asked, right? That how did we start positioning ourselves as an express logistics players for middle mile, right? So now we made a niche for ourselves in which, as Mr. Venugopal said, that when you're talking about Amazon or a Flipkart delivery, right, that expectation of transit times is very high, right? So the expectation of transit times are at an average of 50 kilometers per hour. So just to give you some stats, so they're expecting Delhi to Bangalore to connect in 48 hours, Delhi to Bombay in 28 hours, and so on and so forth, Delhi to Chennai in 52 hours, right? So as an organization, it becomes very, very important, right? That how do you deploy technology, both in form of hardware and software, right? To achieve these service levels at the right and optimum cost, right? So if we talk about the whole supply chain concept, right? We always measure supply chain on two different parameters. One is your cost, right? As in the efficiency of the supply chain. Second is responsiveness of the supply chain, right? Now, if I talk about our initial business, right, in which we were providing the express solutions to the e-commerce company, in which we as a player are able to work with across all the e-commerce companies which is currently operating in the country, right? It becomes very important that in terms of the service levels, is it just a tracking device? Or as Mr. Venu said, you're using the IoT devices to monitor your driver behavior to ensure that the safety is at the topmost priority, the overspeeding limits are not there. And secondly, how you are mapping the demand with the available capacity. Okay. Because when you talk about the e-commerce solutions or the middle mile solutions, right? Delivery is one important parameter, but as I talked about the efficiency of the supply chain, it becomes very important that how many number of kilometers are you able to sweat your asset using the technology in place apart from the service levels, right? So just to give you some stats, if we talk about India as a country, an average trucker is able to run your truck anywhere between 7,000 to 8,000 kilometers, right? With the platform GoBolt tried to build in a hybrid model in which we had both ownership and the dedicated and marketplace trucks. we are able to sweat an asset approximately 15,000 kilometers per month, right? And that we have been doing for the last 4 years consistently, month on month, right? The possibility of the achievement is possible only because of the usage of robust technology, right? The technology is not just, if you talk about 7 or 8 years, right? Before today, the technology was very much restricted to visibility, right? In which you were talking about what is a tracking device. Now here the dimensions of the technology has completely changed, right? Now it's not just about the visibility. It's about how the visibility is getting imparted into the entire ecosystem, how the driver behavior is read, right? If just continuing with the example with Mr. Venu said, if my truck is going from Amazon from Delhi to Bangalore, is the return load ready so that the wait can be stopped? And what is the technology which you are using on the supply phase? What are the number of trucks or the number of people who are available to join your ecosystem, right? And that ecosystem is a constant churn, right? For a perfect marketplace, you have to ensure that the demand and supply are both in tandem. You can have supply waiting for you, right? For security. If you're not able to give a right at both the ends. So the use of technology in mapping of demand and supply becomes a very important lever, right? And that is where I believe that AI in supply chain has the biggest potential to leverage itself, right? Which focuses on both responsibility and efficiency of the supply chain, right? That needs to go hand in hand to actually drive the customer experience together with the efficiency into the country's supply chain.
Got it. I guess my question to you is, I think a lot of companies, whether they are companies that are initiating the delivery of goods, many of them really don't want to get into the nitty-gritties of how this is managed. So they would rather rely on a provider to sort of take care of the complexity, take care of the problem. And we just want SLAs and we want these things to be assured to us. So, with respect to Shipsy and the smart end-to-end logistics that you work on, so how do you bring the smart into it? So how do you bring data and AI to manage this sort of networks within networks of logistics providers, both within country, outside the country, across states? So can you walk us through how you use data and AI there?
Yeah. No, thanks, Srinivas. I think great question. So, look, from the perspective of shippers, right, who are owners of goods, I'll first maybe talk about that, and then I'll probably talk about logistics companies, right, the actual transporters of goods. So if you look at shippers, right, so a shipper, whether it be a retailer or a manufacturing company, or an FMCG company, they will have multiple modes of movement, right? So let's take the example of a retailer. They're probably going to have imports, right, into the country. They're going to have distribution. Let's say they work with multiple 3PL companies. They work with their own fleet, right? So the first part of the intelligence, so to say, that we see, because at any given point of time, a shipper will work with multiple vendors, right, to de-risk, right? And at the same time, they want to have the direct contracts with the vendors, right? They don't really, not, at least the large ones, they don't want to go with aggregators per se. They want to have the direct interaction with them. So that's why that's where we see a real need where people want to move away from human-based decision making to say that, look, for this particular shipment, what is the mode of transportation to be used? Should I go LTL? Should I go surface? Should I go air? Should I go rail? Right? When it comes to ocean, should I go LCL or should I wait, go FCL? That's level one. Second is, amongst all the different vendors that I have empaneled with me, which is the best vendor to go with, right? Now, there is a level below this, right? Which is to say that, okay, how do I decide this? Based on things like historic performance, digitized contracts, digitized SLAs, performance versus SLAs, right? And then the entire intelligence to really say that, look, how do I improve this with time, right? I think the last part is for people that also have, their own assets, whether it be shippers or logistics companies, what is the right number of vehicles that are required for dispatch? What is the right way to organize packages within a vehicle? What is the right sequence of attempts that need to be made? All of this require the intelligence aspect to kind of come in. So,
Right.
these are some of the places, Srinivas, where we are seeing the need for intelligence in logistics.
And typically, what are the kinds of, or what is the volume of data that you collect in order to help your
Yeah,
clients make these intelligent
yeah.
decisions?
No, great question. Yeah. So, see, there are two types of data, Srinivas. So, one is structured data, which is
Hmm.
events, right? And the other is kind of unstructured data, which could be GPS, temperature, that kind of data, which is like a stream, right? So if you really look at it, when it comes to say event data, it could be events from shipping lines, air freight carriers, 3PL. So the entire history of a particular package or a container, right? If you look at say the location, right?
Hmm.
Vessel data, right? The entire feed of the vessel coming in.
Hmm.
That's actually another
Hmm.
place where intelligence comes in, because you see events are discrete, right?
Right.
Location is continuous. And how can you
Right.
reinforce event data with, say, a stream of data, right? So let's say shipping line says 7 days it will deliver. But based on the live location and the speed of the ship, you can say it's not going to be 7 days, it's going to be 8 days. That's where you can actually bring in further intelligence, right? By collecting both of these sources of data. So I think majorly that's what we are seeing. And if you have your own field force, again, you're going to be collecting the events, right, that they make from the app. You'll also collect the
Correct.
live location, the entire trip, where they're
Correct.
going, where they have been. So I
Hmm.
think these are the two major types of data, Srinivas, that exist. And for us, it's critical to ensure that even from a historic basis, because it's not just live decision making, there's a lot of historic data that comes into the decision making, right? So kind of all of this is also considered when it comes to bringing in the intelligence.
Got it. That's a great point. Thanks, Soham. So, Krishna, I think you have been probably a decade ahead of the industry, I would say. You're one of the pioneers of this whole digital supply chain concept and one of the early users of data to make intelligent decisions through the logistics process. And now, of course, in your current role, you're looking at this whole industry from the outside and working on a lot of research. So, in terms of trends, what are some of the key issues that you believe that data and AIML can actually solve for logistics as it stands today in India?
Primarily, the problem we have in the industry is that this industry, if you talk about what they were talking mainly of FTL, let us assume that's FTL, is given 4 horses. The first horse is customer, the consigner, the consignee. The second horse is the transport contract. The third is the owner, the broker or the agent. And fourth is the fleet owner who has a Stephanie driver. That's the equation, very simple equation. You can say it 4 horses or 4 wheels.
Hmm.
4 wheels, the win-win situation is that everybody should make money at the end of the day. So, and technology is definitely the most important factor which can make it happen. Yes, I agree. So, with regard to the customer, that is the consumer consignee, they want better service at a cheaper rate. To lose, except for the fact that they might be a slight increase in the cost of transportation or a slight decrease in the cost of transportation. With regards to the transport contractor, he is a pure finance guy. So whatever he does, he will keep some margin with him. He will make money. If he makes a loss, it's a conscious loss he's going to make. Say, for example, the transport contractor has given a rate and suppose the market rate has gone up. So he is forced to place the vehicle at a loss. He will do it for some time, but he knows he is making a loss. He will compromise there up to a certain degree. But still, overall, he'll keep a margin of 6%, 8%, 10% as per his company. So he doesn't have much to lose. Customer doesn't have much to lose either. That is the consigner consignee. The third horse, the broker, he has nothing to lose because he pockets everything into his. For every placement, he takes 5,000, 4,000. There's no investment. He has got a small table, 2 chairs, one fan, and one palank, charpai, one TV which runs with Sun TV, Moon TV, depending on what types of driver comes. The fourth is the fleet owner. The fleet owner is the only person who can make loss for every transaction or almost all the transactions. In this family is a happy person except for the fleet owner who is also impacted by the driver's whimsical nature, whatever it is, driver's nature, and the lack of drivers in the market. Okay, the battle is here.
Yeah.
We are talking about all the platforms that we have so far is all top to bottom. The person who's going to make the difference in the costing, in the efficiency, he is nowhere in the picture. He is probably getting a better deal, like one of my co-panelists says 15,000 kilometers. That's the right thing. But he's getting it probably once, twice, 5 times or continuously. But there are millions of such people who are not getting it. So the battle is here. Now, the biggest problem created in the entire ecosystem, if you'll be surprised to know, is the concerner and the consignee. Their nature of working, their efficiency or inefficiency, everybody pays the price for it. So in any single trip that you talk of, there could be as much as 20% to 30% time wastage for loading and unloading, and there could be no entries or other factors. So the main battle on the road, the main battle is at the places where the loading and unloading is taking place. They are supposed to be the most educated people. They are supposed to be asking for calling for efficiency and asking for better solution, but they are not willing to change. Some companies are willing to change, and they have got fantastic results with the entire networking. But that's just a small fraction of the entire ecosystem. So when you talk about AI, yes, with the ecosystem that we have from top to bottom, which is today driven by customers, that is the shipper or the consignee driven business. So if you talk about transport EG or if you talk about anything, they're all driven by the customer himself is the main cause of this loss, I would say, time, all these factors. So with AI, a lot of differences has come in. But I think so the time has also come to rework on the entire design. And that is why I started this research, that there are alternate ways to make things better. Okay, perhaps we have not touched those the simple things. It's like, it's time to go to micro logistics, not from top to bottom. It doesn't anybody's purpose. Only for big people like Reliance and Amazon, and where they want a system and SAP and everything is there. They want everything perfectly. It serves their purpose, but it doesn't serve the purpose of the people who are actually going to make the difference in the ecosystem. And the difference in the ecosystem can be made only by two ways. Number one, you will have to make sure that this car having 4 wheels are all in proper order. It's not that one wheel is punctured. It doesn't work. So you keep on going in circles. And last 20 years, I've seen everybody going in circles. Number two is that we have to make everybody entrepreneur. Everybody is a service provider. The only thing is somebody is a direct service provider like a transport contractors. The others are sub. So the value is between your customer and your transport contractors. Thereafter, customer does not know who the driver is or who the fleet owner is, who the broker is. Nobody knows anybody. But the material is getting delivered. It could be 1 day late, 2 days late, 3 days late. So there's a certain amount of efficiency, and there's a certain amount of people, I'm sure, who will be ready to change if you come out with an alternate module, which is a micro. The time has come for everybody to sell himself. If this is my service, I'm good at it. I'm available to serve you. Now let's talk about price. The time has come for a reverse way of thinking, because it is my understanding very clearly that no process is the final process. There has to be a better process than the existing process. So far, I feel that we have all been going from top to bottom, and the time has come for a reverse way of thinking. If you are able to serve our customer individually, as an entrepreneur, today there is no credit to a driver, no credit to a fleet owner, nothing, or a broker. There's no credit. Nobody knows who they are. But if they market themselves, which means just a change in the way of thinking, the AI actually will start taking shape. Today, AI might suggest, okay, this guy is the right guy to do the business. But for every 10 times that he tries to do the business, there are 2 times he's going to fail. The AI also goes for a big hit. Reverse way of looking into it. I think so. When I, as an entrepreneur or I, as a businessman, give a commitment to somebody, not just in the line, but with the system itself, it will have a bigger impact.
Well, thank you, Krishna, for that perspective. That's really enlightening. So I think we've all spoken about scenarios, rather kind of smooth scenarios, where let's say with the employment of digital technologies, by using data and AI/ML models, how an end-to-end process can work smoothly. So I want to change the question a little bit to say that what happens when something goes wrong? How do you train your models and your process to react either during the first mile or middle mile or the last mile? Or if you're sort of consolidating everything and giving it to another customer, when something goes wrong, how do you architect the system to ensure that the next best solution is found in an efficient manner? So maybe Venu, we can start with you. So in your line of business, so the question is, if when something goes wrong, like let's say I've booked something, or in the process, in what we call as the pre-purchase process, if something breaks or something doesn't happen as it is supposed to, how does the system automatically heal itself or create a separate option?
Absolutely. And, good question. So these are some of the things that happen day in, day out in logistics, right? So you would find that, you have ended up having a wrong truck in a manufacturing unit, right? The wrong size of truck. So you wanted a 32 feet single axle, and suddenly you find a 32 feet multi-axle has been sent, with an error that is beyond your control, right? So obviously the machine model has to really quickly figure out that what's the next best option that is available in the market at that point of time, to see that, it really understands the timeline, that is time sensitivity, right? Okay, say for example, can I get another one in next 30 minutes, right? What could be the impact on the price, and how soon can you get? And the next truck that is going to get assigned, is that guy going to be really efficient? And these things we have seen and learned from the Olas and Ubers in the world, right? So you see that the driver would cancel your trip, and you would say that, sir, I'm going to come now, and then he would not end up coming there, right? So what would you do? The Olas and Ubers have really built a model that, hey, the next driver that is been assigned, he would at least not say no to you, right? Okay, so how do you build the right, model around that? That when things don't go right, okay, how do you create the mitigation plan in such a way that the customer experience is not impacted, right? So while there is a bit of an inconvenience, but at least we should see that we are creating the right wrapper on top of it, to see that the alternative that has been provided, it doesn't really impact the experience, right? So those are some of the things that we do at our end, to see that how when on day in, day out, when things are not going right. I mean, this is one of the use cases that I can definitely share.
Great, thanks, Venu. And Parag, what happens like deep into the journey? So let's say you're deep into the middle part of the delivery, and there are some issues. Either there's a breakdown, or there is some issue in crossing from one state to another. So these are physical issues that take place due to a variety of factors. So how does technology play a role there with respect to your platform, or in general, to resolve?
So Srinivas, first of all, when you talk about exceptions, or when you talk about the fact that something was wrong, and just resonating with Mr. Venu, daily there are 1,000 challenges, and when you talk about logistics, the things are bound to go wrong, right? Now the question is, when something is going wrong and you want to move to an alternate solution, what is the speed of the decision making, right? How fast can you turn around things, or how fast can you ensure that an alternative solution is available, right? And that becomes very, very important in terms of the use of technology into the whole ecosystem, right? So just to give you an example, when we talk about our business line, in which GoBolt is into the software as a solution business, in terms of providing end-to-end management solution, there's a product called as you can say the bay management, right? So just to give you a live example, to ensure that the bay idle time is restricted and the bay utilization is higher. Suppose there's a vehicle which is allotted to that bay for loading. Okay. Now that vehicle with that particular product doesn't turn up, right? So how fast is the system to analyze, right, that what is the ETA of that vehicle which was supposed to report at the plant, and how much time that loading time is required to fill that particular type of vehicle on a particular dock, right? And can the system, by the using the historic data and using the algorithms, suggest and predict that this bay can be utilized for this vehicle for a loading time of this time, right? So the important point comes is that how flexible you have made your tech system, and how data is been inputted into the tech system, so that in the different machine learning models in which you deploy into your SaaS-based solutions, how accurate, right, that suggestion would be and how efficient the suggestion would be, right? If I talk about the core business, as you correctly said, that suppose there's a transit times and there's a breakdown. Okay, now there's a breakdown. What are the options? It may be a scenario in which you cannot replace the vehicle immediately, right? Now, how the system acts to it, right? If there is a stoppage or if there's a breakdown, is the system capable enough to alert you in the next 5 minutes that what is the nearest vehicles which are available for this route, right? And which are in empty condition, which can help with the cross dock, right? And how that system is enabling the automated cross dock, that becomes very, very important. That how that cross dock is starting and how the end-to-end supply chain is getting the visibility. That there's a breakdown, the vehicle is getting changed, these are the number of hours. Is that information transferred to the customer on real-time basis? And as Mr. Goa was saying, that with respect to the warehousing guys, right? How they're planning their schedule, right? Or the schedule of unloading for that particular vehicle on the dock, right? So if you see any disruption in supply chain, right? And how come technology becomes an answer is that in supply chain, as you were talking about in your presentation as well, right? Each and every node is interconnected. No node in supply chain can behave in a solitary manner. So any disruption in a particular node is bound to have an impact on the entire supply chain. The best technology can do is one, providing the visibility across the different stakeholders, not just the customers, but the different process owners as well. Second, using the historic data and well-defined algorithms to predict an action, right, which will ensure that the impact across the supply chain is minimized, right? That becomes the two most important parameters when you talk about usage of extensive technology in handling out disruptions.
That's a great point, Parag. So, Soham, you were referring to events when you spoke last, and how sometimes events are tracked, discrete events and continuous events. So failure is an important event, and a failure can occur anywhere in the chain. And when you're looking at it from an end-to-end basis, you're actually creating this whole journey, and if one step is broken, so while it is solved at that particular level with its own optimization, there also has to be a view on how it impacts the overall scenario. So how does Shipsy handle, and how do you handle those kind of scenarios, and how do you communicate that back to your clients and find resolutions?
No, absolutely, Srinivas. I think this is so specifically, if I take the example of something that we'll all relate to, which is say last mile delivery and failed delivery attempts over there. Right. So, a lot of times you may have gotten a notification, and I think you spoke about this as well, right? Like returns. So I think that's one great place where, in real time, we kind of communicate with the end customer, right? The recipient. See, the challenge for shippers is, when a vendor gives, let's say, a non-delivery reason, for example, how can the shipper validate this reason? Right. So that's the basic challenge, right? Let's say door locked. How do we know it's door locked, right? Or how do we know the receiver not available, right? So that's the challenge. How do we validate it? So I think in real time to communicate with the end customer in the branding of the shipper and communicate the feedback that they give back to the logistics vendor. Right, I think this entire loop between the shipper, the logistics company, the driver, and the end customer, these four parties, it's absolutely critical to maintain the communication layer over this. Then it comes to the modes of communication, right? So typically things like if you want to enhance the response rate, things like IVR call, right? So that's an interesting one. WhatsApp, SMS, right? So these are the different modes in which the communication happen, and these are short ways to reduce returns or RTOs as well, right? So this is kind of one of the things that we see, and so that's one example. The second is, let's say, delays, right? How do you communicate delays proactively, rather than someone waiting and then they realize that okay, things are delayed and it's too late, right? So how do you build that predictive engine, which I was talking about, like real-time data and event data? So how can you reinforce event data with real-time data and communicate proactively, right, that this is likely to get delayed, right? And this again could be through SMS, email, WhatsApp, any of the different modes, and to all the parties concerned. So I think the whole point of any kind of data comes to communication, proactive communication, right? Through most favored modes, right?
Correct.
So I think it's an absolutely valid and critical point, and this is what really gives the outcomes that people desire.
Right. Absolutely. That's a great point. And Krishna, I mean, one thing that you mentioned when you spoke about the four horses or the four dimensions of the logistics industry, one thing I think we'll all agree with is one is it is diverse and distributed. Second thing is most of this industry is not technology savvy. So it's like this, like Airbnb doesn't own any hotel rooms, right? Or Swiggy doesn't own any restaurants. So they are an enabler. And a lot of people here are enablers for an ecosystem that is not digital, not tech savvy, distributed, disparate. So how do we solve for that problem? Like, how are you seeing the industry sort of reaching out and coaching and making some of these people or putting these tools in their hands that is easy for them to use and understand and get into this ecosystem?
There's a solution for all the problem that exists. When Transportg as a product was first launched, we waited for 6 months. All customers we went to said, how many transporters you have? All the transporters we went, how many customers you have? And I was at a loss because basically I had no customers on board, and no amount of selling was making an impact. So I have friends in the transport fraternity. I told them, "Bhai, tera company ko main chala raha hu system." I put 40 transporters over there, all leading transporters. And I went to the customers and they still said, fine, you have 40 transporters. But then what is the guarantee that they will serve me? What happens if something goes wrong? So we didn't have any business for at least 1 year. Now suddenly it occurred to me, no customer will do business with unknown transporters. They cannot do. They just cannot do it. They can only do business with the approved vendor, which has to be registered. So I went to tell the customer, sir, the next customer I went is a big customer, and he asked me, transporters you have? I said, sir, even if I have 100, but then if the approved transporters of yours, can you do the business? No. Ask your transporters who are approved to get into the system. He gave the instruction, within 48 hours, about 100 transporters came on board. 2 or 3 transporters didn't to keep themselves as a, no, hum nahi karenge. Then the customer called me again, 2-3 customer abhi tak maan nahi raha hai. So I said, aapka, you are the customer, you're going to pay. You tell him if he's interested, fine. If he's not interested, thank you very much. And that was the thing, I would say, hurdle that we crossed. We had the first 200 transporters into the system. The next customer we went, 60 transporters were their vendors, out of which 30 was already registered in the first. This problems could be resolved if you start thinking from a different angle. We are all used to thinking the way we have been tuned to. So with regards to this ecosystem coming into it, I don't think that's a challenge. There's a way to do it. These are all secrets which I would not like to involve. But believe you me, getting the drivers into becoming an entrepreneur, getting the fleet owners into becoming entrepreneur, the broker into becoming entrepreneur, and everybody, it's not difficult. You only have to have a timeline and a strategy. And you have to make everybody rich. You will get the AI automatically. And those AI will be much more useful to you and the ecosystem than what is more or less today, little bit here and there we're getting. That will be much more useful and better for the ecosystem. But there is a way of penetration. Yeah.
Got it. So one of the things that we observe when we look at companies across industries, the way they have approached the digitization of their business is, there are two things that you will find in most of the companies. One is the websites and, providing SaaS-based services on the website, or even using the website as a discovery platform for their services, or they create proprietary mobile apps, which that is used either by their customers or people who want to use their services. What we are seeing today is the messaging app is also becoming a key third element of this, or the third dimension of digitization. So we have the website, we have the mobile apps, and we have the messaging app. And I think one of the reasons is that there are limitations to discoverability with respect to websites. There are only so many apps, mobile apps, that you can download on your phone. But a messaging app is something that everybody in the logistics ecosystem has, whether it is a shipper, transporter, truck driver, the consignor, consignee, everybody in the system has one or the other messaging app, and that is the nature because of the mobile revolution in India. So my next question to my panelists is, how do they see messaging apps being used as another digital medium for interactions with various stakeholders in their ecosystem? And a related question to that would be, the chatbot is actually the manifestation of all this AI technology in the backend, where a chatbot on a messaging app can actually automatically answer and solve a lot of these issues in real time between entities. So, Venu, if I can invite you to talk about how you are, with respect to your business, how are you looking at messaging apps and chatbots?
Yeah, so this is one of the core thing, right? I mean, one of the channels through which you can answer most of the queries that you get from the customer. So as a platform, we have on the demand side the logistic companies who work with us, and on the supply side we have the fleet owners work with us, right? So both these stakeholders, they have several questions right from the beginning of onboarding a truck to the having the truck placed for a particular transaction, and then eventually doing the delivery, right? So some of them are repetitive in nature, right? So these questions are repetitive in nature, and we think that by deploying a manpower to it is not the best way to do it, right? While the experience is much better to have a human, but then the repetitive task where we think it could be answered by a machine rather than a human being, we think we should move to the chatbot kind of a thing. Now, some of the examples that I can tell you that the truckers would want to know that, hey, have you put the advance money to my bank account, right? If it is, he will get, say for example, the guy is managing about 20 to 30 trucks, right? He would on a given day would be getting about 30, 50 payments, right? He would have no clue that from where the money is coming up, right? So at times, in his bank statement, it would be some bank number. So he really doesn't know the payment has really come from you unless until you have really embedded the remarks column properly, right? And in that case also, he may not have the clarity in terms of, is this the specific, amount reflecting for a specific transaction or an invoice, right? So that's where we give them these technologies through which they can actually ask for it. Say for example, click on a button, ask a question, and then you will get, hey, are you looking to know about payments or a tracking or anything else? And then when they get on to the next question, then the drill down comes out, right? Say for example, payment, you be specific about which vehicle are you looking for, right? So those are some of the things in our day to day. We think that the machines can solve a lot of the repetitive problems, right? Second, we also see some of the things that people ask that, hey, you have done a vehicle KYC, could we get the details about the RC copy or the invoice copy of anything that happens related to the transaction, right? So as a proof of that, most of the manufacturing companies would want to see those documents before verifying the trucks, right? So we ensure that all these trucks are KYC verified, right? So click on a button, the AI is able to, the machine is able to tell you that, hey, here is the thing, and it goes on a WhatsApp as a PDF, right? So these are the things where we as a company have been always trying to do to see that how the customer experience can be seamless and they don't have to be on the queue on a call to figure out that the day-to-day transaction. Otherwise, with the kind of transaction that we do, it will be humanly impossible for us to manage a call center separately, answering those queries, right?
That's true.
Right? Yes. And definitely the experience is one. And the second, the uniformity of your customer experience that you can deliver through machines is phenomenal, right? Versus a human, right? So you would have to train the human in a certain way. The barrier of accent in India, I mean, there are different accents across the country, right? But then having a multilingual solutions given to our customers, we have been able to crack that by providing the touch points with which they can actually get answers for most of the queries that they do repetitive.
Yeah, thank you, Venu. Parag, how about for GoBolt and your line of work? Do you see certain use cases where messaging apps and chatbots are playing a role to make certain processes more efficient?
Sure, Srinivas. I think it's a very nice question. I'll just try to bifurcate it, right? So when you talk about messaging app, and I'm talking as a guy who's been managing supply chain in a few FMCG companies and understand the logistic exposure, right? Now the messaging app needs to be divided into two parts, right? One is when you're communicating someone and it's a action-oriented communication, right? So for example, if I'm communicating to you and I'm asking you to do a task, okay? Second is that it's an information-seeking communication, okay? So now if we talk about logistics in general, and you'll be surprised to know with the type of vendors we work or the SME vendors, right? WhatsApp or other messaging apps have been a very effective communication medium for action-oriented tasks as well, right? Not just the passing on the information. Okay. So now what happens if you talk about technology, if you talk about logistics in general, right? Now what people are trying to do is that at least dividing the messaging part into two parts. One is the action-oriented task, one is the information-seeking task. Now, when there's an action-oriented task, getting it replaced by chatbots is very, very difficult, right? Then you come up with technologies like an application, right, or on a web portal, right, in which the action-oriented task can be digitized, automated, and then further used as an input of your detailed analytics, right? But unfortunately, if I talk about the Indian context, and if I talk about the whole of the logistics market, and especially the transport market, in which 85% of the players are small freight operators, their messaging, right, is not just a communication in terms of information exchange. Their messaging are action-oriented tasks, right? Which makes the process very cumbersome and very inefficient, right? That is where the different SaaS solutions or different technology players are trying to target first this addressable market, in which the messaging app is made more into an information seek, right, rather than an action-oriented. Now coming to information, right, in which via messaging, as Mr. Venu was talking about a seamless customer experience, right, in which you categorize the type of queries and then you standardize the responses. Chatbots, right, are a very effective mode of communication, right? And if it's not just about logistics, if you talk about travel industry, if you talk about any industry in which it's an information seeking artificial intelligence, chatbots is a superb thing to be there, right? For standardization of the solution. For example, there's a truck delay and a customer wants to know what's my ETA, right? It's not an action-oriented message. It's an information-seeking message in which a chatbot can allow you that what's the ETA and then pull the information. But if I talk about logistics, also though the people are moving faster towards technology solutions, but there remains a huge gap, at least in India infrastructure, in which messaging is being used as an action-oriented task, which needs to change or which needs to modify or transform into a more robust technology.
So can you give me like an example of an action-oriented task?
Right. Very simple. For example, if I talk about, and I'll take a GoBolt example, right? Because when you talk about technology, you start a business, right? Technology is something which you develop parallelly, especially in terms of startups, right?
That's true.
So when we're starting in business is 2015, right? And if there's a customer request, say Amazon wants to move something from somewhere, right? Now what happens is a messaging task is or an action-oriented task is that my person will say that this vehicle needs to be placed and so much amount needs to be transferred, right, to this vehicle for diesel or any en route expenses to do that, right? Now the guy or the finance department who's receiving this message, he's receiving this message as in task, right? In which then he'll again go to a platform and then he'll try to do the transaction, right? Now, as we got matured and as we started deploying 100% technology, say in 2017 early, what we did, we didn't allow these transaction messages to flow on communication, right? What we did was that we made an app, right? Whatever request you need to make regarding a transaction, you have a trip code, right? You have a driver code, you have a vehicle number. You just write down that what's the amount that needs to be transferred. That app gives a notification to the finance department, which after approval is integrated with my bank API. And the transaction is very smooth, right? So this is an example in which messaging is used as an action-oriented task, not for the information seek.
Got it. No, that's a great point. And I think we are encountering a lot of these use cases from a lot of clients that we work with. So one is seeking information like what we call as the FAQs, frequently asked questions, absolutely, or structured questions. So those are easier to automate. But now with conversational AI, we are kind of getting into answering more complex queries as well. And also these push notification. I mean, I would say action-oriented task is more of a push that you want to ask the person to do something. I think that's also an area where there is a ramp up. So I think that's probably something for the future, the short term, to add to the whole messaging paradigm. So thanks, Parag. So Soham, in your line of work, where you're sort of providing an aggregate view or an end-to-end view to customers, what kind of role do you feel that the leveraging messaging apps and chatbots plays? What kind of use cases have you encountered where you've tried?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think it's absolutely critical, right? Whether it be WhatsApp, SMS, calling, email, any one of these different modes, right? It's super critical to inform the right stakeholders, right, of what's going on. Now, there are different types that we see. For example, at the time of delivery, secure deliveries through OTP. That's one use case where communication comes in to send the OTP and then enter it back into the app. Then we see, visibility updates, then, live tracking, right? We have also seen advanced use cases in, say, Middle East, where geocoding is a big issue, right? Converting address to lat long, right? Where in a conversational format, we should ask the end customer to mark their address on a map, right? Send their location over WhatsApp and mark that over there. Proactively informing of delays. So I think the list goes on. Validating undelivered attempts through calls, right? Number masking, right? When a driver calls for security purposes. So there's a huge host of use cases actually where communication platforms comes in for logistics, because at the end of it, right, there are apps that people use in their day-to-day lives. People will not install separate apps, right, just for this. Right? They will want, and in an exception-based manner, they will want the communication to come in a platform that they're already using, not have to download like an all-new app for that, right? So I think especially in the B2C world, it's super critical, right, to have these different communication modes in place. Srinivas.
That's a great point, Soham. And I think we are also seeing the same trend across multiple industries, where there's a bit of fatigue now and a download barrier to downloading yet another app. So we went through that phase where there is an app for this and there's an app for that. But now I think there is some sort of fatigue that is also setting in, and consumers would want to receive most of their communications or interactions with a limited set of entities. They don't want to proliferate any further. So that's a great point.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, Krishna, final thoughts from you before I hand it back to Hafiz. So you've seen this whole ecosystem up close for a while now. So do you see messaging platforms or messaging apps, chatbots playing a role in bringing in those efficiencies that you were talking about with this whole disparate group of entities across these 4 dimensions?
I 100% second this gentleman, Mr. Chokshi. What he said is absolutely true. In my research in the last 2 years, this is one factor that I have focused on, and I have already developed a prototype solution for this. Today, the game is occupying the space in the cell phone, first page and second page. Which is occupied by YouTube or Make My Trip, all these things. That space is limited, and that space is something which I think so every entrepreneur should try to occupy the space over there. You forget logistics, you just the consumer of goods. Today you don't have an application which connects a consumer with his brand on a lifetime basis. But you have every brand's, every consumer brands and whatever it is toward the lifetime. Each brands have their own. Each brands have their own websites and call centers and your apps. How many customers of there actually download the app? They are very proud. App hai, but मैं जाके बोलता हूँ sir, how many have downloaded it? They are ashamed to say 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. That is true. That is the future. Occupying the space in the cell phone in the first page or the second page is the future. And the future is that each customer should be each business basis or consuming basis or whatever it is, he should be linked to his brands or his people as a one-to-one basis for lifetime. So in logistics also, just imagine there are about 70 companies who are entering the technological field over here. All of them are top to bottom. Do you think that if this 70 apps come, the drivers are going to download 70 apps? The brokers will never do it. The fleet owners will.
Exactly.
So what is going to happen is exactly what happened to Australia after World War II. Each of the provinces of Australia, they built their own railway line network, having their own gauge. Like India, we had narrow gauge, mid gauge, and broad gauge. That's exactly the situation we're going to lead up to. My research is based. What happens is that when you enter the field, you get very excited because you see the problem, solution, and then we are go for it. And then suddenly we realize, my dear friends, there are other alternate ways, but we have already committed to that way. We are not wanting to research in other. And research in India is something which nobody does. That is why US and Israel are ahead. They are into research. When I researched on this, I understood that you are actually able to make one single trigger. You can get the entire ecosystem of your stock, how the stock that is lying in the field, where it is, okay, what is the product, the commencement of the product life cycle, everything. Just one single trigger, you can generate all this information. Just one single trigger. You do not require to have PMS. You do not require to have a retail sales. Nothing. One single trigger can get you everything. Okay. So that's a research solution. I would like to discuss on other forums and other ways. But the he said is very true. It is time that we should have a system for our business. If I am into transportation business, I should be having a platform for chatting on business matters. For personal matters, probably maximum 3 apps. That's it. Nobody would like to have more than that.
Exactly.
When I opened the Hotmail, Krishna_Guha Hotmail, I was very excited thinking things are going to happen. Okay. I lost my interest because too many things come over there. I lost my interest. So
absolutely. Now that's a great point, Krishna. Thank you so much. And so Hafiz, I would like to hand this over to you so that our panelists can answer a couple of audience questions. I think we have about 10 minutes to go.
Thank you, Srini. Thank you, panel members. It's like, we have a quick poll. I think, we have a lot of offline and online questions. Before taking that question, let me run that quick poll requesting the panelists and all participants to cast your vote. So this is the first question. We only have 3, and all respondent will be getting a 1-year free subscription of Manufacturing Today magazine. So do share your feedback.
Audience, keep their votes. In the meantime, we start with questions. Very interesting 2 questions I can see online. I just read out and the panelists can decide who wants to take it. The first one is from Mr. Sethu Raman, who is asking how real-time challenges in logistics can be addressed by exploring AI. As supply chain challenges are never ending, how system is trained to proactively identify potential issues and give a wake-up call to business stakeholders. So basically, using technology, how do you identify challenges and get alert and take decisions or steps accordingly? So anyone wants to take this question? Srini?
I think I did ask this question as part of one of the questions that I asked the panel. So maybe, I don't know if I can request Venu or Parag to summarize. I think they answered this then.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we have discussed in the similar lines, right? There are multifold, things that can be done to really, take AI and help the day-to-day challenges within supply chain, right? Supply chain is a very large subject, but then if you split in various buckets, right, you could figure out the use cases that, would come by where you can actually deploy these solutions and make use of it. Some of the solutions that we definitely see that's definitely going to come in future, and some of the things that are already been used. I think companies like Amazon, Delivery, right? So they have been DHL. So they all have been using robotics a lot in their warehouse management, right? So that's one thing that we see a lot. we have been seeing how some of the things are being done where where visibility checks are done, right? So you take a component, you see whether this component is right or not, right? So there are a lot of visionable technologies that are available from various service providers where you can actually see whether my quality of the product that has really come out, is it right or wrong, right? So hence there are many use cases where AI can and ML models can be used, where you can actually automate the whole bunch of your back office work that you do, right? Right from your payment solutions to customer queries to how do you direct your customer to do step A and then B and then C, right? Whole journey, right? So all these things could be automated through these solutions.
The second one is about notifications. Like most automated solutions tend to have flood of notifications and you tend to miss the important one. So how can we limit the notification to a focused message? Srini, if you could share your thoughts on that, and maybe other panelists could add.
I think that's a very valid point. So I think SMS, if you look at messaging, SMS is the one that's sort of least. You have the least amount of control as an end user in terms of how many you can receive from who. But it comes to the more modern messaging channels like WhatsApp and all of this. So first of all, there are some workflows and user journeys that are crafted in the back end, which ensure that you're not flooded with messages that are random. So there are journeys that consumers go through, and there are, from the messaging app itself, there are a lot of templates and rules and regulations that senders need to keep in mind before they send any message to you. So for example, WhatsApp, I can give an example that up until a couple of months ago, if you have a business account with WhatsApp, you can only send an informational message. So you cannot send anything that is promotional. Only recently, WhatsApp has launched something called WhatsApp Commerce, which allows you to send promotional messages and also conduct commerce on the app itself. So that's what I would say, that there are guidelines that are in place within the messaging app ecosystem itself. And there's a lot of control that is there with the user. So like if you notice, when a business account sends you a message, you have the ability to either stop it, block it. You can even have the ability to say, I don't want to receive this message anymore. Similar to what you have with email, but here it's more immediate. It's just a button that is there underneath the message that you can just click and stop if you don't want to receive it. But a well-designed user journey will ensure that you do not receive this flood of notifications, but only what is relevant. And it also gives you the ability to figure out how many you want, how many times you want to be updated on certain things. So all that is possible today.
You have solutions to segregate or prioritize kind of based on the numbers, the data, or maybe the words or keywords. Is there any way? Okay.
Yeah, there are automatic sorting solutions that we have built that actually work in a lot of handsets like OnePlus and Xiaomi, where there is a AI that is built into the mobile phone itself, which sort of segregates the messages into promotional message, transactional message, important message. The way it happens, if you use let's say a Google inbox, you know how it automatically gets sorted, right? So that kind of technology is also available today.
I've got few offline questions, if I can allow me to take a couple of them. The one is about how AI can help to reduce manual intervention for preparing logistic documents to save time. So with the help of AI, can we reduce the documentation timing that goes into for logistics purpose? Can we reduce that?
Yeah, I think again, there was a question is to the panel, so anybody can take it.
The idea is to definitely reduce time for everything, including documentation. But you have to make one single entry. This material is for whom? The indenting time itself, you have to make the basic entry. If the basic other entry data is there, the rest can take automatically, because other than what you load, everything else is well defined if you select the recipient and the cargo or the order, whatever it is. So yeah, it is possible. I think so. Everybody is doing it. I'm not very much aware of Bolt or this thing, but I'm sure they must be doing it. These are primary things. They are definitely reducing a lot of time frame and adding a lot of value to the ecosystem, be it Bolt or be it Venu's this thing, Lobb. They're definitely doing.
Yeah. And it's also there in many other industries as well. Like if you look at banks where you have these KYC documents and all of that is being automated now. So you just need to keep sending your information on a bot, and instead of filling out a voluminous form like you did before. So yeah.
Just one question from my side. So
Yeah.
are we seeing that bots and all these machine AI driven communication becoming more smarter and smarter moving forward? How can we make this more like a human instead of machine answering your questions? Do you see in moving forward we're becoming more smart? These bots would be able to answer you like human. Is it possible?
The short answer is that is the holy grail or the goal. So if you look at the sort of the value chain, what you have at a basic level are what you call as structured bots, where you have a fixed set of questions with a question with a fixed set of responses. Every response leads to another step in the whole process. So that is a structured bot experience, which which is fairly prevalent now in the industry. Then with the natural language processing, we are trying to see that if someone can just type an answer to a question in their own words, in their own language that they like. So how is that interpreted? So it's an interpretation problem that a lot of companies, including us, we are trying to solve. And then the third evolution is how do you solve complex queries? So let's say something like Soham spoke about somebody not being there, or I want to return my product. I want to return my product, but I want another size instead of this. And by the way, I want to use my loyalty points to pay for the differential. And those kind of complex queries, which need you to sort of integrate multiple departments and multiple workflows into one, while providing that human interface. So that is the next level of challenge. So yeah, so it is an evolution, I would say, and I do believe that we are closer than before. But it is an area where every year you will see sort of an exponential improvement.
Brilliant. We are just left with 2 minutes. Hafiz, I would like to invite you to say the vote of thanks and the poll result also. First one, do you currently use a messaging platform to engage with customer? Yes, 55%, almost half. And do you think instant messaging apps could drastically improve customer experience? So majority, 90% believe yes. So we see most people likely to use this service in future. The third question was, would you like to talk to a Gupshup expert on how the logistics and supply chain industry has leveraged chatbot and messaging? 75% would like to talk to you, Srini. So possibly you can
sure. I'll be
start
happy
the communication with them.
Srini,
Sure,
you have anything to say on the question before we wrap up this?
No, I think this is first of all a validation of our belief and what we are seeing in the market. We believe that every industry, especially including logistics, has reached that point in India where it is ripe for disruption with these kind of technologies, and the data just validates.
I think very broad, and in fact this we usually keep 40 to 45 minutes, but this time we tried 1 hour. But I'm sure there are a lot more questions that offline and also online that we need to answer. We'll take that offline. Thank you very much for sharing your inputs, Venu, Soham, Parag, Krishna, and to our moderator and chairperson today, Srinivas. Thank you very much. I hope you all enjoyed the webinar, sharing your best practices, your real-time experience, real-life scenarios, and much more. We really appreciate all panel speakers committed and dedication in sharing knowledge for the betterment of the industry. Additionally, in the thought-provoking question from audience made the discussion live. We hope it was a learning experience for each stakeholders to the summit. Thank you very much, and be safe. We'll be sharing the entire video. Once
Thank you so much to my co-panelists.
Come back to you with the videos and the learning from it in the next issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.